It's time now to move on to our perspective slot, and today we're focusing on the empowerment of women. In recent months, streets across the globe have been filled with demonstrators calling for more to be done to change women's rights, stamp out sexual harassment and abuse, raise awareness and increase employment and gender rights. Well, for more on all of that, I'm joined by the lawyer, the founder of the Women in Leadership publication and one of the organisers of the Women's March in London, Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu. Thank you very much for being with us here on France 24. I really hope I pronounced your name correctly. But first of all, I want to start you.
You did so well, Thomas. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Very well. Thank you.
I want to start by asking you a very simple question. Do you feel that we're still living in a man's world, or is the tide now turning?
I think the tide is definitely turning, but it is still a man's world because of the changes that need to take place. So the tide is turning because there's now a greater demand and amplification of women's voices, demanding accountability, transparency from institutions, demanding a change with respect to how women are treated in business, women are treated in different perspectives, and especially having more equal opportunities for women all around. So yes, the tide is turning, but there's still many instances that there is clear evidence that it's still a man's world.
Now, the Harvey Weinstein scandal last year led, of course, to the Me Too and the Time's Up movements. You were, of course, out there on the front line in that march in London, that Women's March. Do you have faith that such movements will eventually bear fruit and that they'll lead to concrete and positive change?
Let me tell you right now, I strongly believe that this movement, the rallies, the marches that you've seen, not just in the United Kingdom, but in many cities across the world, are already bearing fruit. If you think about it, the fact that people are no longer silenced and refuse to be made, to be quiet about what they have to say is great advancement. And the fact that you see institutions taking notice and having to respond to public demand for transparency shows that it is bearing fruit. The fact that you've got systems, you've got governments making better steps and trying to advance the way they ensure there is protection in place for those who experience any form of sexual harassment shows that it is bearing fruit. The fact that you and I are talking about this shows that it is definitely bearing fruit. And what would then happen is that it will be taken from talking to actually doing. And the doing will be reflected in terms of laws, policies. It will be reflected in terms of more and more individuals feeling empowered to be able to speak up about their experiences, to own it, and to be able to clearly state that the change has to come now. We can no longer have a situation whereby women are made subject to this sexual harassment behavior as we've been for centuries.
But some of these movements, the Me Too movement included, have so far been accused of maybe being too focused on white women. Is that a fair assessment? And if so, who's being neglected?
I think we need to be very careful with that. Yes, perhaps a lot of the push may have had white women behind it, but the reality is sexual harassment has no color. It impacts black women, Asian women, and white women. I don't think the intention is to exclude anyone. I can say for a fact that the grassroots movements that I'm a part of and those that I work with closely very much recognize that this is an issue that impacts all gender, and that yes, women have the greater and higher percentage of experiencing this. So there is no deliberate exclusion of any particular race. Sexual harassment has no color. Sexual harassment must be ended. Sexual harassment should not be out there for women to continue to be subject to.
You're, of course, based in the UK, and this year marks the 100-year anniversary of women getting the right to vote in the UK. What do you think suffragettes from back then would now make of the current state of women's rights?
I think they'll be incredibly pleased at how far we've come, but they will probably also stand with us in saying that we've not gone far enough. right? I think they will recognize that after them, there have been other trailblazers and other women who've helped to break down the barriers and defy stereotypes. But the fact that the modern day struggles for women still exist, equality is not an established code of practice yet. So the suffragettes will stand with us. We still have issues, right, around gender pay gap. If you think about the issues, again, as we just discussed, sexual harassment, think about domestic abuse, think about the fact that we do not have enough or equal representation for women of all color. I think that is definitely something we need to keep pushing against. When you think about intersectionality and you think about domestic violence against women, one of the things that, of course, impacts us as women is the economic austerity, the poverty, the economic oppression that women experience. These are things that clearly show that equality is still not here. Even just taking as a simple example, the fact that in the United Kingdom, female entrepreneurs only represent 9% of the funding that goes into UK startups. That's sexism right there. There's really no reason why that should be the case. So the struggle goes on, but we are not waiting another 100 years for that to change. It has to change now.
And what have the men that you've encountered been reacting to, how they've been reacting to this wave of women's rights movements? What do you say to those men who feel this is all just a vendetta against them?
All right, so they need to get over themselves, right? It's really important for men not to feel they must have some special invitation to be part of this process. I've been fortunate to meet some incredible men who actually get it, who understand that equal opportunities for all is actually a better and greater benefit for society. Men who understand that women having the same rights as men is something that, as a society, we should have as part and parcel as how we run things. So for the men who feel excluded, I would say to them, first of all, this is not about excluding you. You're very much included. But if the approach is to see this as this is not about us, then they need to change that psyche. I would say to them, be part of the conversation, be part of the solution. How can you use your influence? How can you use your platform to power up women? Not about empowering women. We're already empowered, right? But the same way men power each other up into positions of power, positions of leadership, that's exactly what men should do for women. And women, of course, we should do the same for each other. It should be that as a gender, we should all be able to power each other up. But for the longest time, women have not been given that opportunity. So it is time to ensure that the men who say that they're for women's rights, they need to put their money where their mouths are. It's time to power women up.
Very briefly, what do the next few weeks or months have in store for you and other feminists across the globe?
We keep pushing the agenda. We keep pushing the bar. I'm part of a group that has recently been looking at the issue of institutional sexual harassment, the Inclusion Convention. And what we're trying to do with that is to address how we can improve and ensure that there are best practices in place and accountability and transparency, both to ensure that there's protection for those who have experienced it and to ensure that there's due process in place for those who are alleged to have committed these crimes. And the other thing that we need to think about is how we can shape policies, how we can ensure that the laws that we have in place can work, how much better they can work, and collaborate and work very closely with other organizations that are working on this kind of issues, be it the EHRC or the Fawcett Society. There are a number of grassroots movements, political parties who are looking at the same issue. So I would say in the next few months, we have to keep driving the agenda to find a solution. We can't expect our government to have the answer. We need to be able to present that answer to them and tell them what to do.
OK, Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu there in London. Thank you very much for being with us. We have to leave it there, I'm afraid, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.